Hello, my name is Jack.
My name is Maddie.
My name is Maggie.
And my name is Paul.
Today we will be reviewing The Wolf Among Us, 7 years after its release. It was released in October 2013 on multiple platforms and was developed and published by Telltale Games. The story is based on the comic series Fables, written by Bill Willingham. Originally released episodically, it was beloved by everyone and rode on Telltale's hot streak after The Walking Dead, and was released around the same time as The Walking Dead Season 2. Since its release, there has been a comic based on the game, and a sequel was announced late 2019 and will be developed by the same people who worked at Telltale, now working under LCG Entertainment. So the question of this review is if the original is still worth buying and playing through.
Throughout the game, you play as Sheriff Bixby Wolf as you follow a murder mystery within the hidden world of Fables, located in New York City. Overall, there's not a lot of problems with the story, and it's entertaining for a quick playthrough, but there are a few problems that we have to point out. For one, a lot of your actions don't carry long-term consequences. No matter what happens throughout the story, you will always catch the Crooked Man. Georgie always dies, and Mr. Toad always goes to the farm at the end. There are only a few choices that affect the ending, like the choice of killing the Crooked Man, or if you decide to burn Auntie Greenleaf's tree. Fun fact, you're always late to Auntie Greenleaf's apartment no matter what, and it's always at the same time too. The reason this is so important is because this is a story-based game, and the lack of multiple endings is a sign of poor design. This story is completely separate from the Fable comics, so it has no excuse to be this limited when it comes to endings. Compare this with a game like Detroit Become Human and Batman the Enemy Within. Both have dramatically different endings based on your actions as the player, especially the minor games in the game really don't matter. For example, in the bar scene in the first episode, you can rather go around the bar being extremely rude and messing with the bar, even gather clear evidence that Woody goes to the bar, and at the end of the day, the only thing that actually matters is if you ripped Grendel's arm off or not. The fight always happens, and is completely separate from previous actions and inquiries. The strength behind any game made by Telltale in the last decade is the idea that your decisions matter, and the story literally depends on your moral code. They sell games on the idea that your decisions matter, and the story changes depending on those decisions. There is a deeply rooted flaw in the fact that at the end of the day, your decisions don't actually matter. This game series adapts to the choices you made. The story is tailored by how you play. Not really. The only way you can fail in this game is if you go full scumbag and choose every bad option in the game. And even then, it's not really that different an ending. When all you have to do is think about if you should be a jerk or not, do you really think they should make it a selling point? Now, the reason they probably did it this way is so they could easily make a sequel. You can easily see this when looking at The Walking Dead, Batman, and Game of Thrones, where they all had a very single idea ending where they were clearly meant to be followed up by a sequel, and they didn't want to put the time and effort into making it dynamic. Starts to the game that actually change depending on your choices in the previous game. Now, the best way to solve this problem is to straight up declare to the audience that there's a canon ending and all the other endings are bad ones. Compared to the Tales from the Borderlands, which has vastly different endings depending on your choices, but because the game is directly tied to a potential of a sequel, they were forced to declare a single ending to be the truth. Now, they kind of did this for The Wolf Among Us in the form of comics that came out directly after the game, but were just a retelling of what happens from a single point of view. The problem is that the comics have a new ending that isn't in the game, and that the game's endings are so similar that it makes all the alternative endings and the idea of a true ending meaningless anyway. In any game where you have to decide between good and evil, it is up to the developers to make that decision difficult for you one way or another. Games like Infamous and The Witcher 3 make the effort to show a clear and enticing game from going evil. Being good is supposed to be shown as the harder path, but is easier for your soul, while going full villain is supposed to be easy and fun, but weigh on your heart. In The Wolf Among Us, going full evil has so little appeal that it's more effort than it's worth. For example, let's take the end of the bar fight with Grindel, the end of the fight with Beast, the alley choice with Cruelty and Dumb, and we'll throw in the tree decision with Auntie Greenleaf. All of these decisions have absolutely zero logical gain from them. The only thing you get out of choosing the evil option in any of these situations is that you might get a little fun from them if you get off of that or something. But if you don't like to hurt people for the sake of getting back at them, or because you were simping for Snow the White, then you get zero gain from the evil option. The fact that you can tell which is the evil option in these situations shows how big of a design flaw these choices are.
I'm the lapdog, huh? Here. Fetch. You fucking monster!
For example, in The Walking Dead Season 1, where you stumble upon a car filled with supplies and you are given the choice to loot it or not. That is a good show of a hard choice. If anything, by choosing the good option in any of the situations where listed, you save yourself 20 extra seconds of button mashing. The one exception being Georgie Porgy's death choice, which is still kind of the same as the rest, but it has the best build-up behind it. Unfortunately, it still has zero consequences no matter what. Credit is due where it deserves it. In the first episode where you find Snow White's head, that was pretty convincing if you didn't know how important Snow White is in the Fable comics. Kinda unfortunate it was a fake out and a cliffhanger at the same time. Bixby as the protagonist fits the usual mold for a story game player character, and he compares pretty well to his original comic counterpart along with everyone else. The dialogue is clever and cute consistently throughout the story. If you pay attention to what they're saying, every once in a while they'll put a nice little smirk on your face. If you think about it, a significant part of the entire story is hinged on the idea that you, as Bixby, really like Snow White, especially when you figure out that the center of the cliffhanger at the end of the first two, and maybe even the third episode, is based on your attachment to Snow White. It's the same idea behind Clementine in The Walking Dead, but instead of being a father-daughter thing, it's like, oh god, the lady I kinda wanted to bang is dead now. What will happen next? After you finish the game, replayability goes way down. The choices aren't unique enough to warrant it without a friend by your side.
Telltale applies their classic cell shading techniques here, and they have not aged well over the years. A lot of these are low poly models that make this game harder to look at with time. For example, whenever looking at Bigby's back, you can start to count the pixels on the lines of his model texture. A lot of the props in the game are extremely simple, and anything that is a complicated model is easily copy and pasted throughout the game, which isn't that big of a problem in this case, considering that it's currently priced at $20 and the original price wasn't far off. A lot of these scenes do look really good from time to time. One of the things they did amazing was this neon noir style of lighting. It looks absolutely fantastic at nighttime in these dark alleys, a great mood setter. Character animations are incredibly stiff and basic. And we know it's very small, but the characters don't really have idle or breathing animations, which may not seem like that big of a deal, but it's the small things that count. A character's idle animation is a sign that they are alive and can be a mirror of their personality, so it really shows the thought and time put into the game. Also, the character's hair and hat will almost always just go through their neck when they look up, especially for Bigby. Beauty is the only person with long hair, and she exclusively doesn't look up at things. Funnily enough, when Bigby puts his hands into his pocket, they just shove his hands straight into the model of his leg, regardless of where the pockets actually are, which is a little adorable when you think about it. Most character designs don't fit an exact match to the original comic, which is a good thing. In the original comic, it's almost impossible to tell who any of the Fables are in their human form without context, but Telltale needed to establish who was who ASAP. They made Bigby this hairy, super-toned, disheveled guy who looks like he hasn't gotten a good night's rest in a long time. Snow White has this snow pattern on her business suit that has the look of authority to it. You get a good idea of who the Fable is just by looking at them and how they've adjusted to the mundane world. Lighting is a key feature in any colored noir-style thriller, and a lot of the environmental lighting is well done compared to the automated lighting on the characters. They have this specific lighting feature that creates a half-tone shadow on the characters, and it's really thick, but really isn't a problem overall.
The initial download for The Wolf Among Us is about around 5.5 gigabytes, making it rather small in comparison to other titles, even for a story-focused game. The controls feel natural on any platform. The only issue is that during the QTE sections, if you have to press R2 or L2, it doesn't matter which one you actually choose, regardless of the prompt. Additionally, on Steam, if you try and play the game using a PS4 controller, the button mapping will change between episodes. The game has 4 save file slots, so you can play it all on the same account with your friends, without them directly conflicting with each other. The game will also randomly lag whenever a scene starts or the game loads up.
Gameplay is easily broken down into Telltale's favorite click-adventure style exploration, accompanied by multiple choice dialogue, usually followed by a QTA fight scene that is almost certainly underwhelming. After that, you rinse and repeat 2 to 3 times an episode. Every blue moon, you can actually inspect an object to get a piece of lore out of it, kind of like a collectible, and then read up on it in the Book of Fables found in your pause menu, or the main menu behind extras. There's not much when it comes to click-adventure style exploration, especially when Telltale have been doing this for so long that they have it broken down to a formula. The only problem being that you almost have no incentive besides the collectibles and your own curiosity to go out and investigate the environments. Now, usually in a well-designed story game, if the character inspects something out of the ordinary or something interesting, then that will come up later in the story. Not in The Wolf Among Us. In this game, it only matters if you click on the thing that triggers the next cutscene or dialogue. This means you no longer have to investigate things with any form of investigating. You are just in a guessing game on what the hell you click on to move up the story along and get to the next scene. The QTE sections aren't that bad, but they are fundamentally flawed. Considering that a third of the design for gameplay is QTEs, then they should be really good. The QTEs are bland and basic and fail to carry the impact that they should. Compare this to Naruto Storm games or the Yakuza fight QTEs. A good QTE sequence isn't tied exclusively to the arms and legs, but should be connected directly with the impact and motion of what your character is doing. In The Wolf Among Us, the QTEs fail to follow through with an impact that makes it feel. For example, a QTE is your character reacting to something dramatic on screen that isn't tied to your normal controls, and therefore must have meaning and impact. In episode 1, there is a chase scene that does live up to this. This makes fight scenes feel slow and almost uneventful.
They could not have found better voice actors for the characters. When Bixby talks, he gives the perfect grizzled voice of an old New York detective that's seen his share of war, or something like that. Snow's voice is determined and assertive. We absolutely love it. Similar things can be said for the other characters of Fabletown without fail.
Look, no harm done. I'll give you a pass, but listen. If you can't afford to look human, you're going to the farm. It's as simple as that.
Oh, you were already there. Lying in the bed. I only saved her because I thought she might give me a reward. But she didn't give me shit.
You want a lime?
Sure.
I think they have some at the bar down the street.
One small design flaw is that Bixby doesn't change his voice in his werewolf form, which is a little weird considering almost every other character does. The soundtrack isn't half bad in that it doesn't stand on its own, but they do their job and establish the tone they want you to feel. At least the nighttime chill music kinda bumps. It works very well as ambient background music. A lot of sound effects they use throughout the game are clearly stock sounds, which we can't really blame them for.
Finally, we get to the presentation of the game. Let's start by talking about the cover art used. It's pretty bland and just has Bigby dashing forward with the title in front. The UI looks okay. It's not bad or good, it's just uniform. A good UI for a game should really stand out when it wants to, and that's definitely not the case here. The text for the pause menu and the main menu could use some work, but for the most part, it's okay. The main menu itself is actually pretty cool and almost iconic even. Though a tad simple, it alludes to the suspicion over everyone, including the main character. All of the cast's perception muddied and unclear. It is unfortunate that the menu could not adapt to which episode the main save is on to either darken or lighten the characters walking around. Finally, we'd like to quickly address the trailers released by the game, which are all extremely cliché and bland. They nearly fail to capture the actual vibe of the game. They market it more as an action thriller. Instead, it should have just showed off the fantastical noir style it does so well.
If we were to improve on the game from our own perspective, then first we'd fix a lot of the models and textures to be more consistent in high definition. A lot more animations would have to be added or changed, along with adding a rig to the hair and hat flaps, so they don't clip straight through the model. Change a few of the camera angles to be more dynamic, and reanimate the fights and QTEs. Additionally, we'd push for more alternate endings in the game, with more dynamic character arcs and environments.
In summary, the game has a very baseline story that is near impossible to mess up on, filled with rich dialogue and fabled characters, some okay fight scenes, along with a very by-the-books click adventure style gameplay. We recommend you wait for it to go on sale for a single playthrough and maybe a few with your friends, so you're up to date when The Wolf Among Us Part 2 comes out.